It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Well, good day to you, and welcome to the program. It's County-Wide. Brad Miller with you. Happy to welcome into studio a guest, I got to say, by way of introducing Bud Salome with Yavapai Metal Recycling. Every now and again, we'll just have a conversation. And in this case, one of our sales representatives, Cheryl Duke, called and said, "Brad, there's a guy you got to talk to." And I said, "Oh, Cheryl, this is going to be a customer or a friend or a cousin or something." She said, "No, you just got to talk to this fella." And we did. And in a nutshell, Bud, you're a guest because we had an interesting conversation on the telephone, and I say hello to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And I say welcome to our studio.
Thank
we started chatting. Yavapai Metal Recycling is your business, and that's your ball game. You're into the recycling biz, and we started chatting on the telephone just about some of the, I guess, misconceptions or maybe preconceptions some of us have about recycling, where it is these days with the kind of quote-unquote green movement, and a lot of folks may be more kind of conscientious about living more healthy, in terms of Mother Earth and taking care of her than we've been in a time, and how all of that kind of plays into one another. And you had some real interesting things to say about that, and so we invited you to come in on the show, and here we are today, and that's what we're going to get to. So Yavapai Metal Recycling, Bud Salome is our guest today, and we'll chat more about how you can get a hold of him at his business. And but I just wanted to kind of talk about one of the things that you were telling me is that by and large recycling these days is about marketing.
That's correct.
And kind of explain what you meant by that.
Well, the recycling has to make economic sense for everybody. Not only the folks that want to recycle, but the folks that do the recycling. We talked earlier about glass recycling, for instance. And the glass companies don't recycle glass anymore for the most part because it's not economically feasible for them. The glass has to be separated by colors. You have contaminants such as the metal lids. You have contaminants from the paper labels. And then when you have glass bottles, for instance, people tend to put things inside the bottles that are also contaminants, from cigarette butts to hypodermic needles. Yeah. And it's become economically not feasible for the glass companies to use recycled glass. They use, of course, everybody knows glass is made out of sand, which is probably the most abundant thing on the face of the earth.
There's plenty of it.
And it's easily mined, easily transported, and therefore recycled glass is not desirable. The one thing, like I say, that people don't understand is it has to make economic sense.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, as with the case of glass these days anyway, why do we still do it? Is it to make us feel better? Is there a payoff?
I think some of it is to make people feel better. I think some of it is some of the glass recycling, for instance, I think is probably subsidized by grants and so forth. But yeah, for the most part, I think people want to recycle as much as they can so that they can say they're doing their part to preserve the earth that we have and live on.
And I don't want to minimize that either. I don't want people to say, well, what's the point? There is a difference. If you make, and maybe not just with glass, aluminum cans, cardboard, and what have you, all of those things that we kind of commonly think as being good, candidates for recycling. If none of us did that, we would end up, the landfills would be fuller than they are now.
They would be, and one of the statistics I want to talk about today is annually there's 145 million tons of recycled materials that if they weren't recycled would go to the landfills. And I know that 145 million tons, when you say that, people's eyes just glaze over because they really don't understand it. But if you put it in pounds, that's 300 billion pounds of materials that are recycled that would go to the landfills, and like there would be a landfill on every corner if it wasn't recycled.
If I had one time, and I don't know if this is going to be accurate, but when you talk about recycles, it talks about at what point, and when you talk about cost to the environment, say at what point. And the example that I was given was a styrofoam cup. Styrofoam we hate. Oh, we don't want to use styrofoam. It'll end up in the landfill and it'll be there for 10,000 years.
Right.
But it takes. The statistic I heard was say just a styrofoam coffee cup to make a paper cup of the same size takes 4 to 5 times more water to produce.
Right.
Well, now you're going through more water than the styrofoam. And is there a lot of that with recycling? It's like, well, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul later down the line, and that whole give and take thing.
Well, and some of that is misconceptions because people see something in the newspaper, on television, they take that as fact.
Yeah.
In reality, as far as paper is concerned, half of all paper produced today comes from recycled paper.
Okay.
And using recycled paper takes 40% less water than making paper from scratch, from wood pulp.
Now, this would appear to be a very good thing to me.
Sure.
Yeah. Again, we're keeping it out of the landfill. We're doing it.
Exactly.
As we talk, and I want to, maybe in our second piece, we'll kind of get toward that. We will. I want to talk about the future, where it's going to go, and are we going to be recyclers, and will it pay off, and will the markets bear, and all of that. You mentioned aluminum cans. That's what is recycled. It's the most popular. It's what people think of the most when they think, that can go to the...
Exactly. Aluminum cans has been around for approximately 40 years now. And most people do think, when they think of recycling, they think of aluminum cans because just about every household accumulates aluminum cans.
Yeah.
It started out, there was approximately 10 cans, the number 10, to make a pound of aluminum cans. Well, through technology and innovation, now there's between 30 and 35 cans to make a pound of aluminum cans, depending upon the manufacturer.
Right. So better that not as much aluminum's getting shipped out there to do the same job.
Exactly.
But not as lucrative, say. I mean, when we were kids, we pick up cans and bottles, glass bottles in those days,
Right.
Out in the ditches and things like that, clean up a little bit, but you go turn them in for a nickel or whatever it is,
Right.
and get some aluminum. So even on the little schoolboy level, there's got to be that kind of
Right.
incentive.
Now, statistic I would like to mention is aluminum can recycling has actually dropped in the most recent years because of that fact that it takes more cans to make a pound. Currently, cans are bringing in our area less than 2 cents a pound. 2 cents a piece. Well, it's hard for people to justify accumulating something that's worth less than, say, a nickel.
Right.
And therefore, aluminum can recycling has gone down. And I used to not be a big advocate of the redemption fee that some states have for cans and plastic bottles and so forth, but I'm changing my mind because of that fact.
I think in Iowa it used to be a nickel.
In most states that have it, it is a nickel.
It's been like that for a long time.
California, Oregon, Michigan, Iowa, like you say.
What about that is changing your mind?
Because the recycling rate's gone down. I think more people are just throwing them in the trash.
Nickel ain't worth what it used to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's all a function of cost. With $4 gallon gasoline, it's hard for people to justify taking 5 pounds of cans that they're going to get $2.50 for 10 miles to their recycler.
Right.
And also, most of the redemption states have a fee on plastic bottles as well, which is huge.
Yeah.
Because plastic is worth even less than aluminum when you talk about recycling.
We need to take a break. When we come back, let's talk a little about plastic.
Sure.
Because there's some changes there. Everything used to be in glass bottles, from your mayonnaise to your ketchup. Not anymore. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Bud Salome is with us, Yavapai Metal Recycling. We'll break and we'll be back to Countywide right after this.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your Northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
Hi, I'm Steve Scourgy with Yavapai Silent Witness. Maricel Gonzalez was murdered on this spot almost 15 years ago, back in March of 1997. We know that there is somebody out there who knows what happened in the alley that night. Yavapai Silent Witness is offering an $11,000 cash reward for information that leads to the arrest of Maricel's killer. For Yavapai Silent Witness, I'm Steve Skurja.
If we beat it first. In the fight against arthritis, you need a weapon. What's yours? Visit the Arthritis Foundation at fightarthritispain.org.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to the program again, countywide today. Bud Salome, Yavapai Metal Recycling. The number is 632-5205 if you have a question for Bud beyond what we're chatting about here today. Plastic. Mm-hmm. Everything's in a plastic bottle these days. Plastic jar, plastic can, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
It sure seems like that's where packaging is gone.
It is, and there again, I'm sure it's just cost for the manufacturers and the people that put products into plastic.
Right.
I can speak a little bit about plastic. My expertise is in metal, but plastic is still in its infant stages, I think, for recycling. It's only been recycled for the past 10 to 20 years. And the biggest problem with plastic is volume. Mm-hmm. Plastic, as you know, is very light. It's not worth a great deal of money as a recycled product. I think the prices are in the single cent digits, 7 or 8 cents a pound, right, for the folks that do recycle it. And it just takes a lot of pieces to make weight. And in recycling, everything is bought by weight.
Sure.
You could have a pickup truck full of plastic bottles and you probably wouldn't have 20 pounds.
Right.
So, you're not going to, it's hard for people to recycle
all
plastic.
That air.
Yeah.
It seems to me that plastic's one of the big, we talked about styrofoam, but one of the big villains out there. You just kind of picture a landfill and cardboard and it kind of gets wet and breaks apart, and
right,
at least it gives us the sense that it's kind of breaking down. I don't know what's really happening, but right, plastic is going to be there when your grandkids are old.
And I think they're starting to put some polymers in plastic that do break down over time, but it's still a very long time. And like I mentioned before, in some states there is a redemption fee for plastic bottles, such as water bottles.
Yeah.
So most of those in those states are being recycled.
Yeah, the water bottle thing. I mean,
exactly,
the bottled water industry, they didn't exist.
It's huge.
20 years ago.
And I continue to ask the question why they don't put water in aluminum cans.
Yeah.
And nobody's given me a good answer yet.
If anybody knows, let Bud know. Sir, talk to me about copper.
Okay.
Everybody's stealing copper these days.
Everybody's stealing copper. At least that's what you hear.
That's what you hear it all the time. Yeah.
Copper is the one thing that grabs the media's attention because it disables businesses, schools, churches, stadiums, so right, forth and so on. As a matter of fact, though, as long as there's been recycling, there's been theft.
Sure.
And there are being strides made. We, as a recycler, are required by state law to take in a person's identification, driver's license, scan that identification into our system, and if they bring us more than $25 worth of scrap non-ferrous, which is copper, brass, aluminum, mm-hmm, then we have to report it at the end of the day to an organization called Leads Online. And Leads Online gathers all the information from all the recyclers, and if there is a theft, the law enforcement in that area can go to Leads Online and see if a description of what that customer has brought to a recycler matches what has been stolen, and they can go pinpoint it directly to that recycler.
Okay.
So there's a lot of strides being made. We also have surveillance cameras on our facility. We have 8 surveillance cameras. I told somebody the other day I didn't know if we were running a casino or a recycling place because we had so many cameras.
Well, but that raises an interesting point. Can you recycle your way into a big fancy house and drive a nice car? You know, you kind of think of the whole life of crime. If you're going to steal, you're probably not going to be rich and famous.
Right.
And I know, and I don't want to make sport, because I know some people out of desperation have been kind of driven maybe to do some of those kinds of things. That happens. But is it that lucrative? Copper, say, you know, because like you say, we do hear a lot about it, and yes, it causes a lot of problems.
A pound of copper, bare copper, is worth around $2.50 a pound.
Okay. And
copper's fairly heavy. If you steal 100 feet of copper that's as big around as your little finger, you've probably got 100 pounds. So you got $200 or $300.
Well, you hear about the guys that try to make off with a spool of the stuff from the phone company or what have you. But as you described, with kind of the stop gaps we have in place with law enforcement, it's going to be awfully hard. You have to clip off a little piece every 3 weeks or so and then drive somewhere else around the state to sell it.
Exactly. I'll give you.
So is it going to make you, you know?
I'll give you an example of how well that is working. Recently, last week as a matter of fact, there were 500 brass urns stolen from a cemetery. And the brass is obviously a recycled metal.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of last week, the recycler that bought those called the law enforcement, and today those people are in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So in less than a week, that crime was solved because of the recycler.
You described the process, and it kind of reminded me, like, I don't know if I want to make this the connection, but pawn shops similarly register certain goods and items and work with law enforcement that way. And it reminded me of that your system is there. How much discretion does Bud or his managers have to kind of eyeball the situation? And
we do. And if something looks out of whack, like somebody brings in
50 urns,
and we don't buy anything that comes from a cemetery, because a lot of grave markers are brass, and we just do not buy them. We don't want stolen material because it's a hassle for us.
Well, of course.
And we get a bad reputation. We have actually gone beyond that, and the law enforcement agencies, be it Yavapai County Sheriff's or Prescott Valley Police or Prescott Police, they call us. And if we have something that's come in that's been stolen, we turn over the information to them immediately, and we've helped them put over 20 people in prison.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So
we want to run a legitimate business.
Of course you do, but there are enough people that are out there that are going to steal things or come by them in some way or another that's questionable.
And like I mentioned, as long as there's been recycling, there's been theft.
Yeah.
And it's getting better.
Yeah. But there's always going to be a few, Bud. Let's take a short break. Bud Salome is our guest today, Yavapai Metal Recycling. We'll be back to Countywide right after this. Talk about the future of what's going on. Back right after this.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
About the dangers of prescription drug abuse. The partnership at drugfree.org.
Hi, I'm Steve Scourgy with Yavapai Silent Witness. Marcel Gonzalez was murdered on this spot almost 15 years ago, back in March of 1997. We know that there is somebody out there who knows what happened in the alley that night. Yavapai Silent Witness is offering an $11,000 cash reward for information that leads to the arrest of Marcel's killer. For Yavapai Silent Witness, I'm Steve Skurja.
Every year, 2 million kids play doctor by taking pills not prescribed to them. Talk to your kids about the dangers of prescription drug abuse. The partnership at drugfree.org.
Welcome back to the program again, countywide. Bud Salome is with us today, Yavapai Metal Recycling, ymrecycling@gmail.com if you want to shoot an email to Bud, or again, the number is 632-5205. We thank you for sharing your expertise and many years studying this field about what it is and what it isn't. Let's talk about the future of recycling. When we talked about glass, and it's like, well, there's not much money in it. A lot of it's going to end up in the recycle or in the landfill anyway. Even if I'm recycling, even if I'm separating the reds, or rather the greens and the browns and the clear glass and all of that kind of stuff. But we don't want to discourage people from continuing. You also gave us some great numbers about what there would be in the landfills if we didn't continue. But down the line, let's look 10, 20, 50 years, say, is recycling here to stay? Will we at the consumer level still, do it? And will businesses have incentive to produce things that can be recycled and can be reclaimed?
Well, yeah, the scrap recycling has been around for over 150, 200 years. During World War II, most people know that scrap was a big recycled product so that we could build armament for the war. And I think recycling will be around for quite some time to come. It may evolve as it has evolved over the last 100 years. It's gotten a lot more technical. I think it'll get more technical yet. There will probably be products that are innovated and developed that we don't even know about yet that'll have recycled value.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't see any reason why scrap going forward is not going to survive and thrive.
Right. What do people maybe not recycle that they could or should?
Most misconception about recycling, especially in our business, we do metal, is that we take virtually everything metal.
Yeah.
And people don't relate metal to things like appliances,
right?
Hot water heaters, anything, fencing, anything that's made of metal, we buy as a recycled product.
Yeah.
We have people call us every day, do y'all buy dishwashers? Well, sure we do. It's made out of metal. Do you buy stoves and refrigerators? Of course.
Along that, we kind of didn't touch too much in the show on e-waste. Mm-hmm. The old cameras and computers and things like that,
mainly,
where there's a lot of metal, but there's a lot of plastic, and there's glass, and there's wiring, and on and on. Do they become more difficult to recycle because they're component?
E-waste is in its very infant stages. E-waste has probably only been around for recycling in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's gaining prominence because there's more and more volume. As you know, computers and televisions and so forth become obsolete in a very short period of time, and therefore e-waste is becoming a recycled product. And it's still in its infant stages. There's a lot of problems, but I think in the future e-waste is going to be a huge recycled material.
Fascinating subject. And Bud, we're so happy you were able to share some time with us today to talk about this. Recycling, it's a big game, it's a big business. Are you part of it? Should you be? Hopefully you had some answers come your way today. With Yavapai Metal Recycling, 632-5205, owner Bud Salome, and we thank you, sir.
My pleasure for being here. Thank you for having me, Brad.
See you next time. It's countywide. We'll see you too.
This has been Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's Countywide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.